Hello and welcome to episode 1232 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Monday, November 27th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this morning by Justin Mason. Justin, good morning, sir.
Good morning. How you doing?
Oh, not too bad. Freezing over here in Texas, but otherwise doing okay. You have a good holiday week?
Yeah, I did all right. Everybody survived, which is a good thing.
Good.
And it is freezing here as well. It is 34 degrees in my office this morning.
Not great.
Yeah, well,
Not a fan.
I have a cold stove season, even though it hasn't really been a cold stove, but it is a cold stove in my office
Yeah, there you
right
go.
now.
There you go. Yeah, because the stove is, simmering. I think it's simmering nicely. We're going to get into some moves. And I mentioned last episode that this time last year, or around this time, like within a couple weeks here, a year ago was a massive flurry of moves. Will we get that again here with the winter meetings on deck? It ended up being kind of your prototypical old school winter meetings where a bunch of stuff went down, a bunch of guys signed, and that was like the bulk of our off season. I was looking back at some old episodes, and we had 4, 5, 6, 7 star level players discussed in each one for a couple different episodes there. So hopefully we get that as well. We are going to cover a couple moves. Then we're going to get into some small sample studs from the year. Now, we've discussed some recently. We did that second half stud episode, which those two kind of go hand in hand, especially if they broke out in the second half and that's all they'd really played. So we're not going to be talking about the likes of Zach Geloff or Royce Lewis or Yainer Diaz. I think another one that would have fit was Will Benson. We've discussed them recently, and a couple of those guys we've discussed a lot, Royce and Yainer specifically. So I got 8 different guys that we haven't given as much love to that had really strong small samples. And for me, the small sample was between 200 and 400 plate appearances, and pretty decent bit of work there. 2 of them are catchers too. We talked about the depth of catcher. We kind of mentioned these 2 in passing when we were talking about some of that depth. We'll get into them a little bit deeper. Then some fun outfielders, a big slugger, and then a utility type guy. But let's talk some moves. My Tigers making moves, and I like this one, Justin. Kenta Maeda to the Tigers, 2 years, 24 million, 12 per. I got no beef with that. I got some Tiger fan friends that are hoping that this opens the door for like Yamamoto signing, but I'm not sure. I don't know what their friendship is. I don't know if he's recruiting. Even if it's a standalone deal, I've got no issues with it. Maeda's always good when he pitches, unless he's hurt, basically, right? Like that's the only thing that ever really stops him is injury or the Dodgers moving him to the bullpen late in the season to manipulate his contract back when he played there. But other than that, this guy's just a good pitcher. He had some struggles early on in the year. Guess what? Turned out might have been dealing with some injuries. Had a 10 earned run outing in late April, right before a 2-month IL stint. It counts, right? It's on the ledger. It counts. But whenever I see one of those right before an injury, mentally I kind of discount a start like that. And Kenta Maeda still put up a 4.23 ERA despite that. So if you take that out, we're down to a 3.47 ERA for Maeda in, what would that be, 20 starts during the year. When he came back, he was pretty nails down the stretch. From late June on, Kenta Maeda put up 88 and a third innings of a 3.36 ERA with 103 strikeouts. I think, he's got a little bit of a home run issue. Comerica can help that a bit. Solid pickup here. I think it's a decent Erod replacement from a skills standpoint. I would bet on Erod for more innings in any given projection, but I do think the skills are replaced here. What do you think of Kenta Maeda, 36 years old, going to the Tigers?
Can we pour one out for Sawyer Gipson-Long? Because that was fun while it lasted.
That's fine. We might have been overrating him. We as a fantasy baseball community anyway. I'm still excited about him, and you need more than 5 guys anyway. We don't know what the expectation is for Casey Mize. So you're right. He gets kicked out right now as far as penciling guys in.
Yeah.
But
the hard part is they still have Spencer Turnbull. They still have
I have no
Alex Fado, and
not a good pitcher.
I know, but out of options. So like he's going to be on that roster
and in the bullpen.
So just a little bit of bummer. I think maybe you still take a dart throw on Sawyer Gipson-Long in a draft champions, but other than that, he's You know.
Turnbull was non-tendered, and I told you he was going to be.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Because they're beefing. He got beef with the front office there.
Yeah.
And like I told you, Scott Harris was like saying the right things, like, oh, he's our guy, we're gonna look to get him back on. Nope, non-tendered him. So he's gone. Faedo, I mean, he's had some instances. You're right, he's gonna make the roster, but there's still, if you love Sawyer Gibson Long, you're not paying a premium. You can keep drafting him in DCs. I don't see any issue with that because no team's getting through the season with just 5 starters anyway.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that could probably come up like right when you need a starting pitcher in like June.
Exactly.
So I don't mind. It just means one less stash that you can take. As far as Maeda goes, I mean, I love the fit. I love the fit for the Tigers. I love the fit for him. It's a good park. I don't know that the park helps with the home run problem as much as we would maybe initially think. You look at like the X home runs in Comerica, it actually would be higher.
I think the X home runs thing is useless. Like literally useless. Because it requires the same batted ball distribution.
That's fair.
And so why wouldn't you just use park factors?
I mean, you could. You just use park factors.
Find between the two, it's going to be a lot more useful.
I think over time it gives you an idea of, okay, this is a better analogy to the park. So
Target Field's been a 103 the last 3 years for righties. Comerica 85.
There you go.
I think it's a pretty decent gain for Maeda, who has had a pretty consistently above 1 homer per 9.
I do agree with you that when he is on the field, he's a good pitcher. And the question is just how many starts are you actually going to get out of Kenta Maeda? The nice thing is the price on him is not going to be high at all. Yeah. So let's see. He's in the Gladiators. Maeda is currently going at pick 277. That'll go up because anytime a guy signs, their price goes up. But like, I don't really care as long as it doesn't go up like 20, 30 spots, which I don't think it necessarily will. I don't have a problem with where he's going. And he's currently going in between Shoto. I'm gonna butcher this one.
I heard it the other day too because I also butchered it. But go ahead, you take your best shot at it.
Imanaga. Who like, hey, there's some potential upside there, but what do we know? Like, we have no idea. The other pitcher going ahead of him, and both of these guys are going about 10 picks ahead of Maeda, so maybe this is where Maeda ends up. Emmett Sheehan, like, I don't know what Emmett Sheehan is.
I think I'd take Maeda over both.
And then starting pitcher going behind, you got Kyle Harrison. Like, I don't want to draft Kyle Harris. Carter Crawford.
Not a Gladiator, that's for sure.
Yeah, so, like, I mean, guys who either don't have Maeda's skills or his role for sure. So, yeah, I have no problem with where Maeda is going. I think he is a decent, SP6, something like that. So,
in fairness, I don't want to draft Maeda in a Gladiator either.
No, not in a Gladiator.
For like 20 starts. But in a DC, I'm all there because I think it's going to be 20 good starts, giving my like solid 110 innings. Yeah. And we'll go from there with Kenta Maeda. But solid pickup for the Tigers.
He's the perfect guy for like 10 and 12 team leagues. So like those of you who play in the shallower formats, like he's the perfect guy you pick up. He gets injured, you drop him, and then you go back and pick him back up when he's back healthy. So
bingo.
In kind of your standard 10 and 12 team leagues, like Maeda is a perfect kind of target a little bit later.
Yep. Because if things fall apart, you move on very easily from him, or when he hits the IL, which Kenta Maeda does with some frequency. By the way, this coming in right now, we don't really have to get into it because I don't know that Jason Hayward's moving the needle, but it looks like he's headed back to the Dodgers. But this other deal, much more important, and I've mentioned it every time they've signed a pitcher, and they've signed 3 now. There was a list of like 8 Cardinals pitchers that just so very much fit the Cardinals image is what I mean by that. And they got Lance Lynn back. They brought in Kyle Gibson. Kyle Gibson very much on that list. And now they're finalizing a 3-year deal with Sonny Gray, who I think fits that list as well. We mentioned like Aaron Nola was on that list, bringing back Jordan Montgomery. There's just a bunch of guys that are like, oh yeah, they make sense for the Cardinals. I think Sonny Gray fits. And if they do follow through with this move, which they say, it's close to finalizing, we've seen things fall apart before, and obviously we'll correct on Friday's episode if it falls through. But if it does go through, I think he's the ace, and I think they're probably done as far as like bigger name pitchers, because then they're going to have Sonny Gray, Miles Michaelis, Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, and Steven Matz, and I think that's going to be their main 5. What do you think of Sonny Gray in St. Louis? Is this an upgrade for him, neutral, or a downgrade?
I mean, I think it's an upgrade. It's a fantastic defense behind him, and it's a fantastic park. It's a pretty good division to pitch in, even though there are the offensive teams in that division are getting better. I just still don't think it's like, it's not like pitching the AL or the NL East. So,
I'll be here, but I'm going to appear off screen. I have to get some chapstick, and I keep it stocked in my closet.
Yeah, of course you do. Yeah,
by the barrel. But I'm right here. Go ahead, keep going.
And it's an interesting move by the Cardinals. I think in conjunction with, signing Lance Lynn, signing Kyle Gibson, you've now added 3 starting pitchers that at worst are going to give you just a crap ton of innings to go along with Miles Michaelis and potentially Steven Matz, I guess.
Matt's penciled in right now.
So, it's just it's a really old rotation. I just retweeted this so you can go see it. But Vlad Sedler, he posted a GIF of the Cardinals rotation in 2024, and it's a picture of the Golden Girls having breakfast. Because you have 34-year-old Sonny Gray joining 35-year-old Miles Michaelis, joining with Kyle Gibson at 36, Lance Lynn at 36, Steven Matz, the young man, at 32, and will be 33 this season. So it is a very old rotation, very Cardinals-esque. I mean, I guess they figured.
So maybe I'm wrong. Let me interrupt you real quick there. So maybe I'm wrong about them being done because maybe they need supplemental guys. So maybe they go for one more name level guy. Like obviously Gray is 2 cuts above.
I don't think
Gibson.
they'll go for a name level guy. I think
they will. I think they'll get another Kyle Gibson type.
They could.
And that's what I'm saying. Because I was going to say, Gray's a top level name. Lynn and Gibson are kind of 2 cuts below. I think they get another Gibson Lynn type.
I mean, I think they get another Steven Matz type.
He's in that same group.
Yeah.
Gibson, Lynn, Matz, all the same in my opinion.
For me, a guy who's left-handed, who can go between the bullpen and the starting rotation.
They got that with Zach Thompson, I think, though.
God, Zach Thompson's so bad, though.
Is he?
He is.
He pitched well when he pitched. I mean, he gave up too many hits, but
it
was a 339 BABIP, though. There's 16% strikeout minus walk. I don't know. It depends how viable that 25% strikeout rate is for Zach Thompson. Then I would need, if I see that.
Have a ton of lefties in the pen.
And that's what I was kind of looking at with Thompson probably being chief among them that could start. I don't think John King and Drew Rom.
A top tier closer or a really, really good bullpen arm would be really nice on this team.
I think that could fit. Yeah. So maybe they're not done. Maybe they're not done because it is such an old rotation too. But I like this move for Gray. Taking a look at where he's been going in draft champions, which again is the 50-round draft. And
they also have Liberatore in the minor.
Stop it.
I'm just saying a lefty can go between the bullpen and the rotation.
At AAA, yes. If they really need that AAA. Listen, I fell for this guy a million times. I know he's just 24. I'm actually not fully out on him. I'm being more tongue-in-cheek than anything else. So let me be clear that I haven't quit Matthew Liberatore, but I don't know. What does your boy Matt Thompson think? Our boy. Is he out on Liberatore completely?
Yeah. But they also have Tink Hence and Roby in Double-A. Both the guys are top-tier pitching arms.
Yeah.
that will probably be up at some point. So I think, I mean, they may be done in terms of their rotation, and maybe they're just going to add to their bullpen, and maybe like I don't even know if they need an offensive piece at this point.
With
Like,
Helsley and Gallegos, they'll probably only add like lower or like middle tier relievers. So they
which
probably
is
won't go
fine.
for a big dog. But yeah, if they
Yeah.
strengthen it, there's nothing wrong with that. And I agree. Where are they going to move on offense? Maybe trade Tyler O'Neill, create something that way. But I don't see a big offensive player. This pitching attack has been what we knew they were going to do. The one thing about the Cards, they're pretty easy to read. They stick with what works, and we knew that they were going to go heavy on the pitching. They have, and I think they've done all right. It's just that it's super old with Gray, Gibson, and Lynn joining Michaelis and Matz.
It is not what Cardinals fans wanted to see.
Understandable, but they had to know it was coming. If you've been a Cardinals fan for more than 10 minutes, you knew this was coming, even though I understand the annoyance with it.
I mean,
because it
Gray's
is so unflashy.
Gray's a perfect choice for them, I think. Like it's a big
except that he's 34. It's just that they didn't want another old head, right? I think that's what you would hear from most Cards fans. It's like, really, another old guy?
Yeah.
So I think that's the problem.
Get that, but like, were they really gonna? I don't think they wanted to go long term on.
No, I agree. I'm with you. I'm just saying I see it from their side of like our third straight old head. That this is what we're doing. We're just going with old heads to replace the pitching that we didn't have last year. It's just going to break down again. Like that's the counter if you're not happy with these moves.
And I totally get that, but at the same time, like Sonny Gray is healthy, and health is the only issue with Sonny Gray. If healthy,
for sure, talent's there.
Yeah, he's a fantastic starting pitcher. The question, I think for them was going to become like, I think everybody thinks Jordan Montgomery's going back to Texas, or a lot of people think Jordan Montgomery's going back to Texas,
which makes sense. Yeah,
Aaron Nola already went back to Philadelphia, unless you were gonna get Blake Snell, and maybe they don't even want Blake Snell. There's a lot of issues with Snell's profile. Like, what starting pitcher were you guys shooting for? Like, I mean, you need starting pitching. You don't really need offense. Like what starting pitcher is making a bigger difference than Sonny Gray?
Yeah, that's a good point. Once you didn't get Nola, and we don't know how in they were in on Nola. It was just those of us in the baseball world like predicting him to go there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that's a totally fair point. And so, what could they have realistically expected? Not much, and outside of
the
like
next best starting pitcher is Eduardo Rodriguez, and he may not want to go to St. Louis, considering he didn't want to go to LA.
He'd be another good fit, though.
He would be a great fit. I would have loved that.
Like that would absolutely work. But okay, well that's a solid move there. We like that for them. We think that that's going to work out for the Cards. And so let's continue to move on here and talk about one other move before we get into our small sample gods. Eugenio Suarez moving over to the D-backs to play some third base there. They get a little bit of power. Actually, not a little bit, a lot of bit of power. Pretty much exclusively power in this deal here. Not a bad deal. These two teams have been linking up lately. Obviously, the big Paul Sewald deal. But Carlos Vargas and Zebby Zavala are headed over there. It is kind of interesting for the Mariners to get a reliever from the D-backs after trading Paul Sewald there. Now, that's me mostly being tongue-in-cheek because Carlos Vargas and Paul Sewald are markedly different. But it's like, you had a really good reliever right there. I will say, I've always liked the Paul Sewald deal. I thought it was more justifiable than the Graveman deal. Even as somebody who backed the Graveman deal, I thought Canzone and Rojas weren't bad pickups, even though they were trading their closer in a playoff chase yet again. I thought the two hitters might have helped them more. But now with this deal, you send back Vargas, who is an interesting arm, much younger than Paul Sewald, big strikeout arm. So he is different, 24 years old. And then he goes with backup catcher Zebby Zavala, who I don't really think is a fantasy factor. So look at it as Suarez for Vargas here. Let's start with Suarez. He's obviously the big piece. Do you like him in Arizona? We got him penciled in at the third base spot, of course, and batting third right now.
Well, it depends on what metric you want to use. If you use park factors, it's a downgrade. If you use X home runs, it's an upgrade.
I'll use the park factor.
So I'm fine with it. I mean, Eugenio Suarez has power wherever he
Yeah.
goes. Like
Has power, will travel.
Yeah, I don't think this is an issue. This is like the Chris Davis when he got traded from Milwaukee to Oakland, and everybody's like, "Oh no."
Are you worried how much it fell off? I did not realize this. He played every game this year, so shouts to Suarez on that. He did drop from a 223 ISO to 159. What's up with his power metrics? I was not tuned in to Suarez this year, so I missed this until just now looking at it. You got max EV holding firm. You got overall EV, which is not a great metric to use, but it did go up this year. Barrel rate did come down from 14 to 13%, 2-point dip. Excuse me, 15 to 13%. But hard hit rate is down a half point. I'm trying to find, like, what's the culprit here? Ground ball, fly ball is not markedly different. Oh, home run to fly ball. There it is. From 19 to 13. So is this just a bad luck thing? And go ahead and let us know, what is the X homers? That's probably where the X homers catches back up.
Yeah, the X home run in Arizona would be 25 to the 22 that he hit. So, though, I mean, the X home run in Seattle was 26. So I guess it's not any better. I think part of this was luck. I think part of this was bad luck on Suarez's part. You mentioned the home run to fly ball rate. The X slug was markedly better than his slugging percentage. Like, I think he will end up just being fine. Like, there's nothing in the metrics that tell me that he's a guy that is like burnt or anything like that. And we've also seen this from Suarez before, where it's like, oh, the power's great, and then the power drops off a little, and then power's great again. So like, I'm not worried about Suarez at all. I think
it did drop like this though. He had the bad 2021, but the power was still there from like an ISO standpoint. I don't think that, I'm not pushing back on you because I think that you're wrong in anything you've said. I'm just saying, like, it does look like just a homer to fly ball thing. Every other power metric for Suarez is in line with history. So how can I get behind anything but homer to fly ball here? That's the only major change, and I think it explains a lot of what we're dealing with here. In fact, we can run the numbers. We can give him 6 points more here because we know how many fly balls he hit. He hit 171 times 19%. Guess what, Justin? That's 32 homers. You know how many he hit the year before? The 2 years before? 31 and 31. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not worried at all. Now, has this fall off, quote unquote, bred any level of a discount for Suarez? I'm going to tell you that he is pick 281 in DC's. The 24th third baseman off the board. That feels like this does feel like a buying opportunity.
Yeah, 279 in the Gladiator. So I think this is a buying opportunity. Even if the price raises a little bit, like, I don't think that matters that much. Good news too is that Suarez actually is a pretty decent defensive third baseman. I know he got a lot of flack for being a really shitty shortstop earlier on in his career, but he actually is a pretty, he doesn't have a great arm, but he has a pretty decent range at third base. So the great infield defense shouldn't be affected in Arizona if you're worried about kind of that for their pitchers.
That's good.
I think one of the questions, or there's actually two kind of questions that this kind of brings up, not for Suarez, because I think you and I both still like Suarez, especially at the price, is one, what does this do
for Lawler?
For Lawler, does that mean he's going down, or does Perdomo move into a super utility role?
I think it's that Lawler doesn't have a spot yet. I don't think it's any deeper than that.
But he's going to have a spot at some point.
But maybe not this year. He's 21.
You could.
He had a good year, right? Like, nice AA, AAA year, mostly at double, where he put up a 122 WRC plus, went up to AAA for 2 weeks, cooked 150 WRC plus, 150. Got a little 2-week sample in the majors. It didn't go well. I don't give a shit. It was a -4 for those that are wondering. It could have been a 154, and I would feel the exact same because it's 34 plate appearances. But 21 years old, they can easily justify putting him in AAA for a month and a half.
Yeah.
Unless he just, kills. If he goes with a 150 WRC plus again, well, then he's going to force some things and then we'll see what's what. But I think going into the season, it's very clear that Jordan Lawler's not going to break camp. There's no reason to.
And then what does this do for Seattle? Does this mean my boy Josh Rojas has a role? Because Rojas is actually decent down the stretch for Seattle.
He can still only be a platoon guy though, right?
Yeah, strong side platoon. But
so that helps.
makes him a more interesting guy in draft champions leagues.
Sure, now, I can agree with that.
In your 10s and 12s, you're not drafting Josh Rojas, but I like him in other places.
Yeah, and this does open up an avenue for him. Do they have any prospects that might be benefiting from this? I'm looking right now. I don't see any that are like name guys that jump out. Their main prospects, well, Harry Ford, of course, is a catcher, and I believe he can actually play other spots too. He's like really athletic and everything. But then a bunch of pitchers, and I don't really see. And then you get the hitters are outfielders. Yeah, so I don't see like a minor league prospect that's an infielder that really benefits from this. I do think your boy Rojas. Oh, and Luis Urias, who they picked up from Boston.
Yeah,
he's going to play a lot of third as well. Rojas can play second. So I think Urias.
They can also add someone in free agency.
True. But they might go with those two. I think they might like both those guys. All right, let's talk some small sample gods here. Again, not talking about guys that we've already discussed. So don't be like, oh, you forgot about Royce Lewis. No, we know. But if we talk about them, about Royce Lewis one more time, y'all are going to kill me.
Just drafted Royce Lewis.
I like that gladiator that
got him
there.
Got him back into the 4th round.
It's not bad at all. So I did a stat head run over at BREF between 400 and 200 plate appearances with an OPS plus of $115. Just arbitrary there. Just kind of get the guys that did pretty well in that relatively small sample. And again, lots of guys that we've discussed, plenty. Royce Lewis, Zach Geloff, Mitch Garver, Will Benson, Yiner Diaz, but plenty that we haven't really dove in on. And I want to start with somebody who we might have been talking about a ton, if not for a pretty devastating injury, which really sucked at the end of the year, just as things were popping off for Stone Garrett. He breaks his leg trying to make a defensive play in Yankee Stadium, and that really, really sucked. Now, he's always looked like a short side platoon guy because he's blasted lefties and had issues with righties. He doesn't have great plate skills with a 30% strikeout rate, but he did jump up to a 10% walk rate this year. And even in the small sample, it's at least notable, and it was helping him perform well. So we saw a 115 WRC plus, 269, 343, 457 slash line with 9 homers and 3 steals in 271 plate appearances for Stone Garrett. He's expected to be ready for spring training and everything because he's already running a bit as of late November. In fact, last week was the update. Do we like Stone Garrett to build on that sample that he was showing? Was it just a flash that people are going to overrate? Or will the injury keep his price in check so that it was a flash, but people aren't going to overrate it? Where do you come out on Stone Garrett?
That's a really interesting question because, Stone Garrett feels like every year the guy that we talk about that is like, oh, wish they would just give him a chance to see if he can make the atrocious plate skills work.
Yeah.
And because he made improvements. I know that, yes, there's still not great contact ability here, but he dropped his O swing 5.5%. He raised his in-zone contact over 2%. The swinging strike rate still at 16%. He's always going to be a 30+% strikeout guy. But, if he can live in the low 30s, how much different is he from a hitting perspective? Obviously, he runs, which Suarez doesn't. Then Suarez, who we just talked about, guy who's probably going to strike out 30% of the time, but if you give him enough plate appearances, he's going to hit 30+ bombs. Mm-hmm. I think that's in the range of outcomes for Stone Garrett. The problem is, what else is in the range of outcomes is spending the entire AAA or the majority of the year at AAA, and now you factor in a devastating injury.
Yep,
and that's a problem. Where's he going in draft champions because he's not being drafted in gladiators?
491 in between some intriguing names, I think. Oscar Colas on the young and up and coming side, and Trent Grisham on the I can't quit this guy side. He's right in between those two. In fact, if
I'll,
you go
I
ahead,
was gonna say I'll take him over Colas because one, I don't know if Colas has a job.
he certainly
Even
doesn't to start. In fact, I want to say a recent Mining the News made it relatively clear that he was going to start in the minors. I might have the wrong guy, so I'm fact checking that. But go ahead. What were you going to say about
yeah.
with regards to Grisham and Colas?
So in terms of Grisham, it really depends on what you're looking for. I think often when you get to round pick 500 in a draft champions, people are looking for guys with upside. And not to say that Grisham doesn't have upside. The thing that Grisham has over Stone Garrett is a guaranteed role. Like Grisham is gonna play all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually more valuable in draft champions because when injuries hit, you need to make sure you have guys who can fill in your lineup because you can't go to the waiver wire and pick up the guy nobody drafted. So uh, I think in draft champions leagues, I am taking Grisham, but
Same.
in a standard league, I might just take Stone Garrett. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And then I just go and pick up a Trent Grisham or someone like that.
Yep. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And in DCs, I'm definitely going Grisham. Lock in my like at least 450 plate appearances. You'd think, unless he just completely falls apart at the dish again. I mean, he
But
improved a
at
little
least
bit this year.
defensively, Grisham
That's
is
the thing.
good.
That's the
He's
thing. They're
gonna
going to
play.
play him. He's played 152 and 153 games the last 2 years with an 81 and 87 OPS plus for the Padres. This is Trent Grisham. Unless another person emerges that can take that center field spot, they appear committed to him as long as he's kind of living in the 80s there with his OPS plus, which isn't great, of course, but he bats ninth and he picks it beautifully in the outfield, so he can be a 2-win guy like that. So yeah, I agree there. Stone Garrett, you wonder if the leg will impede the steals at all. He wasn't burning up the bases in the first place during his little run. It was actually kind of a power run that put Stone Garrett on the map before the injury. But 3 steals, so I don't know what to make. Like 6 steals in 355 career plate appearances. That's a full season of like 10, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's
Stone
really the
Garrett
power.
is Stone Garrett is like a right-handed version of Jack Sawinski. And like
Ooh,
Sawinski's
I
been
like Jack
able to
Sawinski.
be fantasy viable. Now he's maddening, and if you're playing in head-to-head leagues, don't draft him because there's going to be these hot stretches that you love, and then you're also going to eat the cold stretches, which kill you
Yeah,
in a week. But for Roto,
just give me the final line, baby.
yeah, give me the final line.
No, I'm with you, and I like Jack Sawinski. He's run more. If Garrett can run like that, that would be a nice little comparison. Oscar Colas expected to start the season in AAA. Chris Getz mentioned that he would benefit from more regular time in AAA Charlotte. So I did have that right from the Mining the News. You mentioned Jack Sawinski. That was an inadvertent segue as we move over to the Pirates and talk about somebody I don't think we've mentioned at all this year. But are you familiar with what Jared Triolo did in the 209 plate appearances?
I
Do you know
am
who
now
that
because
is?
I didn't know who it was. I mean, no, I knew who it was, but like I he was one of those guys that like towards the end of the season, I was like I really just need a body. I need
And he
someone who's
keeps popping up.
and he's like, oh, he's got 6 stolen bases on the year. Like, could he be? He's hitting almost 300, and
Yep.
but I don't think I ever pulled the trigger on him. And I mean, it's interesting. Like, he's an interesting guy for this year because he might play in Pittsburgh. It really depends on what Pittsburgh does here.
I
In
think they're going
the
to carve out
offseason.
a role for him and let him kind of bounce around a bunch of spots as a super util for Triolo, including maybe some second being added to his mix per another Mining the News, a different one than the Oscar Colas one. But Jeff had talked about how he altered his batting stance to help him get in a little bit of pop, and he might end up playing some second. Of course, we'll see what happens with somebody like Liover Peguero and O'Neill Cruz's health. you know,
Juwan
you got
Bay is still there. Like,
yeah,
I
you
mean,
got Cabrizi at third, locking that down. Triolo currently penciled in at first base for them. And so if he plays, could be interesting. He ended up putting up 3 homers and 6 steals and 209 plate appearances, 298, 388, 398. That's right. The OBP and slug were 10 points apart, which is not great. He had a sub 100 ISO. So, I mentioned that the batting stance helped him get into some more power. You can imagine where it was before if a
mhm.
0.99 ISO is a powered jump. But he wrote a 440 BABIP too. Let's be clear on that with Jared Triolo. But I'm wondering if you find any intrigue here. He strikes out too much, but he does take some walks, 12%. I like that. He's always taking walks. He runs a bit. I think that's where it could be sneaky. Like if Jared Triolo got enough playing time, I could see like 5, 6 homers, but maybe upwards of 20 steals because of how often he gets on base with the Pirates. Do you think a 26-year-old Jared Triolo has any draft champions vibes?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got some draft champions vibes. Like, he's not a dude that like you're gonna go like, this is my guy that's gonna help me win. He's not this year's Cedric Mullins.
No.
He's not this year's TJ Friedel, but he like could be just a guy that plays a fair amount because he can play all over the place, multi-positional eligible, which helps in terms of like filling those roster spots when you
Only
do
in
have a
lower
bunch of injuries.
qualification. He's third base coming
But
in.
he will
Sure,
have
sure,
that.
sure. I just want to point out second and first if you only need 5 starts. He had 6 at first, 10 at second, 35 at third. But I agree, he will add it. I just want to make people
Yeah.
understand that he won't have it at the draft table. Go ahead, Jared Triolo.
The problem is like he doesn't have a carrying tool in fantasy necessarily.
Correct.
So like he's got a little bit of speed, he's got very little bit of power. I think he did strike out at a 30% clip, but I think that is a little bit deceptive. Talking about a guy with a 13% swing and strike rate, made just below league average zone contact, swung outside the zone 30% of the time. I think the strikeouts actually will be okay. But he's obviously not going to run a 440 BABIP. So the batting average is going
No.
to come down either way. But like you're talking about a guy that maybe if he could get to 500 plate appearances, could be like a 715 guy.
Yeah.
But
So we have a range there, right? You say 715. I was saying 520. So that's what the kind of player we're talking about here with Triolo.
yeah,
He strikes me as a guy who could maybe attack more. I think some of his strikeout rate is built on trying to take a walk. A
yeah,
little bit too passive, perhaps. We talk about this concept a lot with different players. I think Triolo might suffer from it. And maybe if he attacks a bit more, can get into some more pop, take the pitches that he can hit instead of trying to get deep into a count and just force a walk. But we'll keep an eye on him. I think he's an NL guy late in your draft champions. I mean, we are
yeah.
talking 465 in draft champions. Like he is not an expensive pickup. He's in the 30s rounds consistently if you want Jared Triolo. Any last words on him before we move on?
No,
Let's talk Willie Castro from Minnesota. And I expected that he might, even though I couldn't really remember any conversations that we'd had about him, I went to go look and see, okay, have we been talking about him a bunch too? Because he had a ton of steals, 33 steals this year for Willie Castro. And we actually haven't really discussed him that much. He's kind of been under our radar. The last time he was mentioned on a pod was late July. And so, my fault on that for not putting him on a rundown, but Willie Castro ended up being a really interesting fantasy player for folks. Tough part was he was in and out of the lineup. So he was bouncing around the league that way because he would not play for a while, or I think he actually got hurt for a little spell too. So he wound up with 409 plate appearances, 9 homers, 33 steals, 257, 339, 411 on the slash line. Not a bad season for Willie Castro in a super util role. Can he maintain that role and continue to be a stolen base asset, or are you worried about the big gaudy 33 steals overinflating Willie Castro's price? What do you think?
I mean, I think a lot of Willie Castro's value is dependent on what the Twins are doing with Byron Buxton. Is Buxton gonna just be a DH now? Like, are they? I
I think
mean,
they have to stick with that.
which is crazy because they gave him the big contract in part because he's a premium defender. But
True.
dude cannot stay healthy. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. Like, if like he's a premium defender, if he's
On
defending
the
the
IL.
IL, yeah. So
Exactly. So that's the tough part there that they're conflicted with. I mean, Justin, it's still, I know we do talk about Buxton a lot. He still has one 100 game season. 100 isn't even that good, but he has one. It was 140, but it was ages ago now in 2017. It's just like, I know we all know about his health and all that, but like sometimes you really have to say it and really understand how Buxton just doesn't play. So your point there is like Willie Castro can get a lot more center field burn
yeah,
if they're not playing Buxton there, but he can also bounce around. He's a better defender, I believe, than Polanco, particularly at second. Correa's
well,
health has
and
never been, locked
everybody's
in.
health on this team. Like, we were
True.
just talking about
Royce,
Buxton, Royce Lewis, Jorge Polanco, Buxton, like
Correa.
Correa, like all of like this entire team's health has been atrocious. So like I think there is a lot of reason why Willie Castro could easily be a guy that plays every day and gets to 550 plate appearances. The crazy thing is he's not a burner. Like, he's not
No,
like the
smart base runner.
fastest guy. He's just a smart base runner. And this was the guy that a lot of people were talking about, or type of guy a lot of people were talking about.
Yes.
As like, oh, hey, he was a middling stolen base guy before, but with the new rules, he could steal a bunch more, and he did. I don't know that I would project him to get to 30 stolen bases again, but I think 25 is easily within the range of outcomes, especially if we're expecting 500 plus plate appearances from him, which I would be.
This is why we have no clue on projecting steals, though, outside of just the burners that we know are going to run. Dude was 9 for 13 2 years in a row. Willie Castro was. And it's like, okay, that's pedestrian. It's a bad rate at 69%. It's not nice. So, okay, like we're not going to expect this guy to do anything, maybe even with the new rules. 87% success rate and 33 steals. Like, it's just so difficult because it isn't just the speed. It is the smarts of knowing when to go. And great season for Willie Castro. He's still only going to be 27. And if he gets to that 500 plate appearances, like you're saying, that could be really nice for him. 312 is his ADP in Draft Champions. Willie Castro, third in outfield eligibility. You paying that premium for him. Or not, it's not a premium. You're paying that price, I should say. I don't think it's a premium necessarily.
I think I am, especially if I need speed. I think that, I think he's going to play. I think he's going to be multi-position eligible. I would pay for that price, yeah.
Yeah, I think I would too. He was a guy that I kind of watched him do this thing all year, and I missed him one of the times that he was available in my league, and I could have used the steals. But even if we're not projecting 30 again, put him down for low 20s for 4-something plate appearances, and if he gets to 500 and reaches 25 plus, we're golden. So that's Willie Castro. I like him over there in Minnesota. Let's talk a banger. Let's go power on this one. And a bit of an older guy who people that have listened to the show for a while will remember that. I used to love this dude. Fell out of love with old Ryan O'Hearn because why wouldn't I? He wasn't in KC anymore, which isn't a great place to be, but I just thought that's where he's going to get playing time. That's where he's going to find success. It was built on, his 2018 small sample. I was like, oh, this guy's got power. And I think I even compared him to the early breakout of Matt Olson because he had a small sample at the end of a year that ended up, turning into who he turned into. That was not the case for O'Hearn. After that 2018 flourish in 170 plate appearances, Ryan O'Hearn went on to post 901 plate appearances of a 70 OPS plus, Justin, a 70. So, of course, I moved on. I gave up. He goes to Baltimore this year, and he puts up another big flourish. 368 plate appearances, 14 bombs, 289, 322, 480 for the slash line. Is there something here or just another small sample run from a decent power hitter, but not anything special? What do you think of Ryan O'Hearn in Baltimore?
Oh.
Can I tell you before you answer? He is penciled in as the first baseman right now. Can I at least just tell you that? I'm not saying I believe it, but I just want that on the table. Go ahead. Talk about Ryan O'Hearn.
The underlying numbers say this is somewhat legitimate.
Pardon me? I'm sorry. What was that?
The underlying numbers say this is somewhat legitimate.
Okay.
We're talking about a guy who had a 10% barrel rate, above league average zone contact, hits for power. I think the biggest issue for O'Hearn is he's a guy that tends to not elevate the ball. We're talking about his career fly ball percentage is 36%. And that's what he had in 2023 as well. So I think that's very legitimate. And that's a hard part to hit for power in to begin with. So, and then you move on to the bigger issue, which is I know he's penciled in as a strong side platoon at first base, but I don't know that I believe that. Like,
I'm not sure I do either. So, for those that aren't watching on YouTube, I had a pretty big dopey smile on my face when I was saying that, knowing that you weren't going to be fully
yeah,
sold on that. But that was kind of the point, was like, hey, what about this though? And you're like, yeah, okay.
yeah. I don't know. Even if he is on the team, which I don't know for sure that he will be on the team. Uh, I don't know where 500 plate appearances come from, and it's hard to want to invest in a guy that I don't think has a reasonable path to 500 plate appearances. Now, I mean, if he hits the way he's hit in 2023, then they'll figure it out. I mean, he can play the outfield technically, though the outfield is, I mean, every position there is just completely
Ex-
blocked off,
except for
except
first.
for
But do they start to use first to put some of that runoff in? And I say runoff as if like Kobe Mayo isn't a badass prospect, but like they can't find a spot for him. So is that going to be the spot for
well, and they
somebody
had
like that?
Santander playing there too sometimes last
And maybe
year.
that's the move, because he's not, the most nimble outfielder. Maybe you get him there and then you move one of these infielders to the outfield and let them
I mean,
express their athleticism out there.
the move obviously that everybody's screaming for is trade some of this hitting for pitching.
Correct.
But who's selling pitching? And as much as this young hitting is young, it's outside of like Jackson Holiday. None of their like guys that are up right now are necessarily like surefire prospects.
Sure. I
So
mean, you're only trading a surefire though if you're getting an ace, and like you said, who's trading an ace?
yeah,
But I think you can start to work on something with the likes of a Mayo, a Colton Cowser, a Heston Kierstead, for a pretty good pitcher still. I think you're still getting back something good.
I,
And I know, it gets so boring because all we ever do is talk about the Marlins trading pitching for hitting with these teams. But I keep going back to them for a reason. Now,
yeah.
they're less flush these days because, now Sandy's out for the year, and we've moved on from the Edward Cabrera situation as like really becoming anything. So maybe they're not as flush. But you do wonder if Baltimore is going to make that move, because they do have so much hitting talent on the
Yeah.
prospect side. And they can pair a couple. You put a Westberg and a Kierstead together, that should bring back a pretty damn good pitcher, no?
I mean, I would think it would, but who knows?
But
And
who's
I mean,
selling, to your point, which is
and
a fair question.
like, I mean, you just saw, Sonny Gray get 3 years at age 34, and guys like Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson be some of the first pitchers come off the market. Like, teams need pitching; they're not trading pitching,
In
unless they're
fairness,
getting.
that was all the same team.
Yeah, but I mean,
But can
a
we
lot
think
of
of any
teams.
team that has, well, okay, let's go to the other team that we always talk about in default with a lot of pitching, Cleveland. And we know they don't want to pay anybody ever, so getting younger guys is part of their MO.
Shane Bieber for some of those guys.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Now,
I
I
mean
don't even know if you got to
the
do
other.
some, because of some of the issues that Bieber's run into. Does one of those names I mentioned, a Westberg, Kierstead, Mayo, Cowser, does that, with some supplemental prospects thrown in, like maybe not some of the
I
top tier
mean, I think
guys?
Cleveland would do that. The question is, will Baltimore? Like
I don't know.
Baltimore
It would
has,
depend how they feel about Bieber.
yeah.
Does he really
Mhm.
add for them? I
And
know
do
you're
they
not a
want to
huge
spend that kind
Bieber.
of money?
How much does he cost? Well, he's an ARB still.
More than $40, which is tough for the Orioles apparently, even
So
though
he
they have
made
no.
he made 10 mil this past. Oh wait, actually I don't have to try to guess. MLB Trade Rumors has ARB estimates. Let me look
I'm
that
gonna
up
guess
real quick.
15 million.
I think you're probably going to be close, and I'm going to look up to see what it is. Arbitration projections.
15.69 is my guess.
I thought you were closer. Their estimate is not much, 12-2, only a
Oh,
$2.2 million
okay.
raise. Now, he isn't coming off the best year, but it's 128 innings that went pretty well. I think they're a little shy. I think it's closer to yours than it is to the
Yeah.
12-2, but we'll see. Anyway, that's only a 1 year commitment. Do you give a Colton Cowser for that? I don't know.
I think that becomes a hard sell.
I think I mentioned him specifically. I don't know if he's the lowest of that bunch, but like I think Westberg's probably on the higher end. I mentioned Cowser because he's an outfielder. I think they'd be more inclined to move an outfielder, and then if they need outfield, move an infielder out there later. So I don't know. I think Cowser is the lowest ranked. Maybe he's the dude. Who knows? Um, I think the reason that we're on this tangent though is because they could make moves to squeeze out O'Hearn pretty easily.
Yeah. And we
And so
gotta
that's the
hurry up.
problem.
I've got my
That's
chat
right.
here in
That's right.
15.
You got your chat coming up here. So let's move on. Brendan Donovan. He was turning it around, man. And maybe I'm saying that mostly as somebody who bought in on him coming into the year. But he had gotten cut in my league. I picked him up. Things were turning around, and then he got hurt. And his season was over in July. He had a really good June and July. And if you didn't have him, you might have missed that. You might have just wrote off Brendan Donovan as kind of a flop season based on expectations that he had. But he wound up with 11 homers. Remember, we were talking power upgrade for him. He actually did have it. It got there. 11 homers in 371 plate appearances after 5 and 468. I'm fully bought in on Brendan Donovan again next year. What say you? Do you like him?
I mean, I loved him last year. I'm gonna love him again this year. I mean, a lot of it's gonna depend on
281.
the price. Ooh, 281 feels like a lot of people already love him. I was
Oh,
really
you think
hoping.
that's a lot of love? I paid
feel like
272 in our Gladiator, and I
I
didn't
know.
regret it.
I think the question is like, will he be ready for the start of the season?
Let me get an update on that.
And what's his role going to be on the team? He's already started a
Super
throwing
util. Correct.
program, so
Early November.
and there has been a lot of talk that Tommy Edman could get traded out of St. Louis. So like I think he's gonna play every day. He's just gonna bounce around like he always does, and I think he is just a really fun guy who can accumulate at a lot of
Agreed.
different positions. The only part that is a bummer is because he got hurt. It limits the amount of positions he's going to be eligible at to start the season, but he's still eligible at second and outfield, which is fine. So
Okay, good. Oh, I was looking at something else where I thought he only qualified at first. It did a weird cutoff. No, first he'll qualify in if you have 10 start minimum.
yeah,
Other than that, it's
yeah,
just second and outfield. But that's not bad. Second and outfield, I'll take that.
Mhm.
For Brendan Donovan, I'm excited about him, and I'm paying 281. I paid 272 in our Gladiator. Two catchers before as we wrap up here. Bo Naylor, we have gotten some talk about him because we've talked about the catcher market and how it really has experienced a boom. And these two that we're going to talk about are definitely part of that. Bo Naylor, joining his brother Josh, obviously there in Cleveland. He came up this year, put up 11 homers and 5 steals with a 237 average and 230 plate appearances. Justin, does a 24-year-old Bo Naylor jump out to you as somebody you want to get next year?
We're talking above league average zone contact for a catcher. Doesn't swing outside of the zone. Doesn't strike out a ton. 8% swing strike rate, which is kind of says that maybe the strikeout rate will actually drop below 20%. But even if it doesn't, I mean, he was at 23% this year. There's power. There's some sneaky speed.
Mm-hmm.
I love Bo Naylor. I think Bo Naylor is going to be a massive target for me as a C2 in a lot of drafts. And
the
even
market
if
is a fan. The market's a fan. He's catcher 12 at pick 170.
Wow. Okay.
Going ahead of Ohapi, Heim, Ruiz.
Ooh. Okay. I think he deserves to be going there. I was hoping he would be going lower.
Agreed. I can't even say it in a different way. I totally agree. Like I like Bo Naylor. I'm interested. I'm not out on that price, but I'm probably not paying it often. I might get my Bo Naylor share just to be in on it. But there's just too many catchers I like behind. I didn't even mention Campusano, Garver, Tyler Stevenson, Alejandro Kirk, Dan Jan. The next guy we're going to talk about, Ryan Jeffers. So That's the tough part for me. The 11 homers and 5 steals really jumped out for people with Bo Naylor, and so they're paying a premium for him, which again, like you said, is fair and deserved, but might be a little richer than I want to pay with
Yeah.
all those other great catchers behind him.
Hmm.
But let's bring in Jeffers then, because I think his season was even sneakier. Bo Naylor was a big time prospect. People were expecting things. They'd seen that his brother could perform. That fair or not, that builds some expectation for him as well. Ryan Jeffers more sneaky. Remember, he popped 14 homers back in 2021, but he hit 199 with that. So I think that went completely under the radar. He popped another 14 this year, and he only needed 42 more plate appearances to do it versus what he did in 2021. But this time he hit 276, 369, and 490, which is a hell of a slash line. Is Ryan Jeffers somebody to get in on? And as I mentioned, he's a good bit cheaper at pick 280. What do you think of Ryan Jeffers in Minnesota?
So I think Jeffers was my second catcher on our Gladiator, if I'm remembering
That is correct.
correctly.
You picked him right at ADP too, 279.
I'm kind of regretting it a little bit.
Oh,
I
do
mean,
tell.
he got pretty lucky in the BABIP department. He's a career 305 BABIP guy at a 359 BABIP.
Pretty high.
XBA was 232. He makes round league average contact, a little bit below.
Now, does XBA smooth out your BABIP sort of like an XFIP
Yes.
does with your home run rate? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's worth bringing that up so that the frame of reference is there. But in a way, citing the BABIP being high and then citing the XBA is saying the same thing two different ways in a way.
It's more backing it up. Right.
Exactly.
As
I just want people to understand what those stats are doing. That was underscoring it, not saying two separate things. Continue on Ryan Jeffers. So you've got some skepticism.
Yeah, and I just don't see where like a ton of extra plate appearances come in. Like he's not a guy that I think they're going, especially with Minnesota having Buxton DHing a lot, other guys who are going to need days off and be using the DH just keep their bats in the lineup. I just don't think that he's one of those guys that we see get to 450 or even 400 plate appearances. I think he's probably mid 300 plate appearances, and it kind of caps the outcome level. The batting average drops. I'm not saying he's a bad pick. I don't think
Sure.
he's someone you should necessarily avoid, but like I was like, oh man, I feel like this is a really good like buying opportunity on a guy that is coming off of a sneaky good season. And I think he's probably a 235 240 hitter with like 13 14 home runs, and that's not as intriguing as maybe other guys are at the position.
I don't know. I think we disagree a little bit. I do think the extra plate appearances are coming. I think he can be treated as a full C1, meaning he plays 6 days a week and just the one off day. I don't know if Christian Vasquez will be the backup again next year or what, but I think he can get another 100 plate appearances or so and get into those mid 400s. I think that's where I'm going to disagree. I hear you on the batting average dip, 276. I'm not planning for that from Ryan Jeffers, but I think give me 430 plate appearances, upper teens homers, and a 240. At that price, I think I'm okay with that. I think that's the thing. The price for me works. And if I miss out on some of those dudes that I really like a bit more, I'm a big T-step guy. I did get him in our Gladiator. I can't quit Tyler Stevenson. And that same group I mentioned with Naylor, Ohapi, Heim, Ruiz, Campusano, the two Toronto guys. If I miss out on that group and I've got kind of an oasis there with Jeffers, I'm pretty good with that. I think Jeffers and Bailey are kind of my last chance saloon guys. Patrick Bailey in San Francisco. But I think Jeffers has a little bit of heat. I don't mind that price. I would have thought with the 14 homers and the 276 average that his price would be a bit higher. And I think that he's coming in at a fair price for an age 27 guy who I believe can get into that 400 plus plate appearance threshold, which only 19 catchers did. I shouldn't say only. That's actually an okay number. He wasn't one of them last year. I think he is next year for Ryan Jeffers.
Yeah.
So that's
I think
playing time is our disagreement, not skill.
Yeah, I think he definitely kind of is the demarcation line of like that tier of catcher. After that, there are a lot of question marks outside of Patrick Bailey, who I agree with you. I really like.
Vasquez got so much PT. He is he's not a free agent, so unless they get rid of him, he'll be there. He was just so dreadful. 355 plate appearances of a 65 WRC plus, and now that's 2 out of the last 3 years that are really dreadful for him. 76, 99, and 65 are Vasquez's WRC plus totals the last 3 years. Tough part is he's a brilliant defender,
And that's the thing.
and he was last year too. Whereas Jeffers is just okay.
We talk about it all the time with closers. Like, managers love their guy, right? The proven dude.
Yep.
Same can be said for catchers sometimes. Is managers?
No, I agree.
Really like certain guys that where they handle on staff. Yeah, stuff
his
like
whole career.
That.
I mean,
yeah. So
he got so many plate appearances despite not being able to hit at all because, and there's value in that. Like, I'm not even blasting Baldelli or Baker and them in Houston for playing Maldonado. I get it. When you're building a real team, you don't care about the fantasy output of a guy if he's helping all the pitchers. And Vasquez can do that. So maybe he doesn't get a ton more, but I think if they don't believe that his bat can get better for Vasquez, then I don't think they give him another 355. I think it'll be closer to 300, 290, and those will go to Jeffers. And so upper 300s, low 400s, opportunity for something there. But Andy Rodriguez, another guy late that I could look at 306. So again, catcher is crazy deep this year. Austin Wells, another
Freddie
one.
Furman.
Like, yep. So it isn't. I just want to point out that Bailey for me isn't last chance saloon. I would go with Jeffers, Wells, Endy, Bailey, and Furman as my kind of last guy there if I don't have my C2 yet. So catcher's deep, y'all. It doesn't mean I'm out on Adley and the guys at the top, but if I miss them, I don't shed a single tear. I'm like, fine, I'll just jump down 3-4 tiers and still get guys I love. So anyway, you got your chat coming up.
Someone's even drafted Mike Zunino.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Was Dusty in an early draft goofing around?
One person drafted Mike Zunino at pick 720.
But why?
I don't know. But
is 720 the literal last pick? That's 48 round.
Yeah, no, just somebody.
I guess they just figure he'll get another opportunity because he is a good catcher.
Good defender. He's a good defender.
He is a good catcher.
All right,
the illustrious return of your chats coming today. You're back on
in 5 minutes. I mean,
so
though not a lot
over
of questions. So
get to chatting. I'll get in there. You know, when mine start, like I don't open the queue that early. Maybe I should in the off season more, but
I opened it about 25 minutes early. I got a good question that I don't even know if the answer or what the answer is. But worst athletic performance by an actor in a sports movie.
Oh, that's really good.
Like
Freddie Prinze Jr.'s wind up in Summer Catch was pretty rough. They had to help him out quite a bit. There's been videos breaking this down. And you might need to get into some of those.
Yeah. I mean,
who's the best? Is it just easy Kevin Costner?
I think Kevin Costner is definitely up there.
Across the many, many movies that he's done.
Mm-hmm. Man, I'm looking at a list right now.
Of worst sports performances?
Yeah, worst sports performances. A lot of these I don't even know. Like I've never even heard of. The dude who played in The Blind Side, that was a pretty bad one.
The guy who played
Bernie Mac in Mr. 3000. Yeah. John Goodman in The Babe.
Oh yeah. Freddie Prinze Jr. was my that's my snap vote. I'm looking at some of these other ones here. He made the list. Tim Robbins and Bull Durham, I thought he was fine. He was supposed to be kind of goofy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I kind of thought that fit the character a little bit there. So I give him. I don't hold that against him. But yeah. Quentin Aaron in The Blind Side, that got the number 5.
Oh, Sylvester Stallone and Rocky Balboa, like screw you guys. Like that's a classic.
How dare they?
Yeah,
Chris Klein in Rollerball was the top of this. I don't know if you're looking at the same list or not, but he was number 1. Worst.
Yeah. Michael J. Fox and Teen Wolf might be the answer.
I might have to rewatch that because I watched it as a kid, and you're not judging things like that very well. I believe that Wesley Snipes got some heat for Both White Men Can't Jump and The Fan.
Really?
See, they kept trying him in these things, but they were just thinking that he had the athletic skills, but I don't think he really.
Where do you fall on Rookie of the Year?
I like that movie.
I do too.
It's a goofy ass kids movie.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, we had that boon of kids baseball movies in the 90s there. I mean, we got so lucky with that. You'd never see that.
Angels in the Outfield. I just rewatched
Sandlot,
that the other
Angels
day.
in the Outfield,
Yeah.
Little Big League, Rookie of the Year. Like, how did we get so many? Unbelievable stuff.
We don't get the good sports movies anymore.
No, we don't get good kids sports movies. They all have to
Or
be
even
like
adult sports movie. When's the last time a good adult sports movie came out?
Moneyball.
Yeah, like
I know that's a pretty long time ago. But they all have to be like that. They have to be like darker, like deeper, cinematic. They're not fun anymore. Like we're not getting kids.
And they've run out of like
movies.
the really good historical stories. So it's like
exactly. So now they're getting into stuff. Yeah, it's either something like that because there's one coming out about some soccer team that got 1 million goals scored on them too. But I don't know.
You want a hot take? I know that you're gonna hate.
Oh God, yes.
Rounders is a bad poker movie.
No, it's not. It's just verifiably wrong.
I mean, I love it, but
it's like, not bad.
It's such Mickey Mouse poker, and I know you've got to do it because like you have to be able to explain it to people.
What do you mean Mickey Mouse poker? Yeah, like what do you? I actually,
of course he was going to lose all his money in the beginning.
Well, yeah. Have you ever watched a movie?
Yeah.
No. You're just dead wrong on that. I don't think you can defend that under any scrutiny.
I can. I absolutely can. But I don't have time because I have to go start my chat.
You're lucky.
It was fun talking to you. I
definitely cannot defend
that. Yeah. I just dropped that.
Horseshit take. All right. Have fun chatting. We'll talk on Friday. Have a good one.
Take it easy.
Peace.